This is a very special episode number 62 of This Makes Me Happy, titled Design Makes Me Happy. Welcome to This Makes Me Happy, a podcast about people and what makes them happy. I am your host, Bernardo Margulis. I'm a designer, art director, and educator, and I'm the principal of This Makes Me Happy, a design studio where I help my clients with branding and visual communications. I'm very happy to present This Makes Me Happy, the podcast, where each week I chat with a different person about what makes them happy. My guests come from all walks of life, and each of them shares their own personal happy stories. Join us every week for a unique conversation. Today is a special episode of This Makes Me Happy, and it's a creative brainchild of This Makes Me Happy, a podcast about people and what makes them happy, and design conversations, an AIGA Philadelphia series where I chat with designers about their work and their career. The following conversation was a live recording in front of an audience for Design Philadelphia 2017. I want to thank the Center for Architecture and Design and Design Philadelphia for providing the venue, technical support, and for listing this event as part of Design Philadelphia. Thank you to AIGA Philadelphia for partnering on the Creative Happy Hour before the event and for all the support, and everyone who contributed to the Happy Hour. Honeygrow for providing the food, Yards for providing the beer, the AIGA board, and especially the AIGA volunteers Kevin Wallace and Alex Kim. Thanks to SteeleEmpire for recording this episode. Thank you to Jason Zappolo for editing this episode. Thanks to everyone who attended, and a very special thanks to the 5 wonderful people who agreed to participate in this recording. Elissa Bloom, Executive Director of Philadelphia Fashion Incubator, Dr. Lloyd Jones, Associate Dean and Director of MEDstudio Jefferson, and Trudy, Senior Fellow and Co-Director of Research at MEDstudio Jefferson, Dr. Natalie Nixon, Design Strategist, Figure 8 Thinking, and Christine Scheller, Vice President of Design at FS Investment and President of AIGA Philadelphia. For this conversation, I asked the 5 panelists to put together a short presentation, starting with the phrase, "Design makes me happy because." After they each presented, I asked them questions related to their design experiences and opened up the floor to questions from the audience, which came via text. I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did.
I'm so thankful that you all said yes. I knew of each one of you before, and I was inspired, and then I was doing research, and I was like, wow. Like, if I was inspired before, I can't say how inspired I am now, so I really appreciate all of you being here. So the way tonight is going to work is we have 5 panelists, and each of them has prepared a short presentation on why design makes them happy. So I'll introduce them in alphabetical order by last name. The exception will be Trudy because she's partnered with Peter. Peter warned me we're one person tonight, so we're going by Jones, Lloyd Jones instead of Watts. Otherwise, we're in alphabetical order. I have a couple questions for each of them. So related to their experience and their careers, and we'll move along one by one. And after that, I have a set of group questions for all of them. And then I will open the floor. Instead of opening the floor, I'm going to try something a little different. A couple of weeks ago, I heard Bob Calvana, who's the Vice President of Design of A&E Networks. He gave his phone number and had people texting questions. And he saw that from John Maeda. So after my initial questions, I'm going to put my phone number up there so you can text me your questions, and I'll pick them up as I go. We'll see how it works. It's my Google voice, so just keep it clean. It's my business number. Otherwise, we're just going to get started. First off, we have Elissa Bloom. Elissa is Executive Director of Philadelphia Fashion Incubator. With over 18 years of both corporate and entrepreneurial experience, Elissa brings a unique and fresh understanding to the world of fashion and business. She has worked corporately for Bloomingdale's and Anthropologie and has taught fashion entrepreneurship courses at Drexel, Moore College of Art and Design, and Philadelphia University. She launched a successful accessories brand, Elissa Bloom New York, which she oversaw for 8 years, while managing all aspects of her company, including design, sourcing, manufacturing, and distribution. Elissa learned what it takes to run a successful fashion company. She has a strong understanding of both the creative and commercial side of business and is committed to sharing her experience with others to help them achieve success in the business world. Elissa?
Thank you, and welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being here this evening. I'm as excited as all of you are to hear our esteemed panelists. So I'm going to start since it was alphabetical and I'm Bloom, on why design makes me happy. Design makes me happy because a simple line can create a magical result. Design makes me happy because of its ability to excite and astonish us through colors, textures, and embellishments. Design makes me happy because the sum is greater than its parts. Design sparks creativity, and the possibilities are endless. Design makes me happy because it can be filled with energy, emotion, elevation, and excitement. Design can transcend us and open our hearts. Design makes me happy because it makes us think of new ways to experiment with everyday materials. Design makes me happy because it has the ability to be timeless, deconstructed, reconstructed, recycled, upcycled, and designed to make something completely original. Design makes me happy because of the vision and influence a designer can have in transforming spaces that embody and inspire our everyday existence. Design makes me happy because of its functionality and ability to bring us joy. Design makes me happy because it has the power to transform us, our mood and our mindset, and makes us feel confident and uniquely us. Design gives us an opportunity to develop our own personal style. Design makes me happy because it gives us new perspective and makes us see ourselves and our environment in new ways. That's my son Avi in the Anish Kapoor at the High Museum in Atlanta. Design makes me happy because it has the ability to give us a wow factor and have us savoring every bite. Design makes me happy because it can trigger positive memories, our inner child, playfulness, and a time when life was much simpler and pure. Design makes me happy because of its ability to heal us, inspire us, and give us space to contemplate and recharge. That's why design makes me happy. Thank you.
Thank you, Elissa. So when I was looking up your career and your work, the one word that I kept thinking of is empowerment. You on your website, you have testimonials from students who have felt empowered by your teaching, clients who felt empowered to run their businesses thanks to your expertise. You work with the Fashion Incubator to empower young designers and help them launch their careers. You are an ambassador for Women's Entrepreneur Day, and their whole mission is to empower women entrepreneurs. The interesting thing is that you're using fashion, which it could be considered as superficial, but it really is very meaningful. So what does it feel to you that you're able to use your experience in fashion and design and empower people through it?
Great question. Well, fashion is so much about our personal style and affects us every day. We always have to wear clothes and put clothes on our body. But I feel so fortunate to be working in the position of really mentoring and guiding Philadelphia area designers through the Philadelphia Fashion Incubator and really helping them see those red flags that I didn't have when I had my own business for 8 years. I didn't have a mentor for many, many of the years. And just being able to really help them and coach them and connect them to help them with their careers has been really inspiring and just so gratifying to pay it forward. And also just to see them not only grow professionally, but also personally. And it's just exciting to be on the other side after 8 years running my own company.
And I think that sense of empowerment, I'm also thinking of something you mentioned during your presentation, that design makes you happy because it allows you to transform yourself. What does that mean to you? What does it mean that design allows you to transform yourself, and why is that something that makes you happy?
Every day, I'm always finding inspiration. I have on my Instagram, actually a millennial intern set up my Instagram account. So just post what inspires you and post twice a day. So I've been doing that for a few years now, not really knowing. But everything inspires me, and I think especially design, from not only clothing, but just the environments that we're in, to, being in all these great outdoor installations, to the murals that are all around us in the city. And to the food slide that I also put out, there's so much incredible design out there, and it's just us being able to see them and really appreciate the design that's all around us every day.
So I'm going to move along to the next panelist, but we're going to hear more from Elissa. I'm going to have some group questions after we go through all the panelists. So next up, Dr. Peter Lloyd Jones and Trudy Ann Watt. Dr. Peter Lloyd Jones is Associate Dean and Director at MEDstudio Jefferson, and Trudy Ann Watt is a Senior Fellow and Co-Director of Research at MEDstudio Jefferson. Peter Lloyd Jones and Trudy Ann Watt are award-winning futurists, professors, and authors who collaborate at the intersection of design and health research, education, and practice. Jones was recruited to Jefferson from UPenn, where he served as tenured professor of pathology and lecturer in architecture in order to launch the first design unit and curriculum of its type at a U.S. medical school. MEDstudio is rooted in studio research, community engagement, and the discovery of new ways to promote health and wellness for all. Peter's recent book, Lab Studio, co-authored with MoMA awarded Cornell architecture researcher Jenny Sabin, records their decade-long close collaboration, described as inseparable from a profound evolution of our vision of life by the Director of Research at Harvard's GSD. In 2016, Jones invited fellow polymath and architectural historian theoretician Trudy Watt to collaborate with him and Sabine at DesignPhiladelphia 2016. Subsequently, she was invited to become the first resident architectural designer in Jefferson's nearly 200-year-old medical history. In 2017, Watt was made Senior Fellow and Co-Director of Research at MEDstudio. Like Jones, Watt's work has been shown nationally and internationally, and she has taught at Princeton, Columbia, and Jefferson. Collectively, Jones and Watt focus on the emergence of new discipline between architecture and science and the ways it will serve people across all demographics, while considering each field's distinct disciplinary legacy and the context of ethics and aesthetics for future researchers and professionals, especially with a hyperbolic, digitechnological post-code era. Peter and Trudy.
Thank you, Bernardo.
Thank you.
It's great to be here. So, design makes me happy because, like the natural laws that govern our lives, it's a vital part of everything that we do. As an academic whose career has been geared towards preventing or treating human illness, design has always been a part of my working toolkit, and my life, in fact. But it goes much deeper than that. It turns out that humans may be unique in their capacity to lean in and imagine their futures. We are Homo prospectus, and it seems that we design and use optimism to actively move towards those dreams and goals. Now, that positive spin, indicating that we may be happier than we deserve or think, makes me very happy. So to design is to be human, and these two things appear to be inseparable. From the moment that we are conceived to our final breath, design has the potential to either derail or radically improve the quality and meaning of life, preserving or extending our physical and mental health and our well-being. Design and humanity also affect the quality of care that each of us receives when sick or dying, even if the outcomes remain the same. It sounds like the opposite of happy, but good design, like great healthcare professionals, can alleviate great suffering and stress. Imagine what would happen if designers and healthcare professionals truly embraced one another, which is something that MEDstudio started at Jeff within the medical school, and more recently as board members at Cancer Support Community, originally named Gilda's Club after Gilda Radner, a female comedian who made many of us very happy on SNL, and that was long before this Chicago-lander on my right, Trudy Watt, arrived in the world to much joy, happiness, and tiger lilies, apparently. And I looked that up. What does it say about her, tiger lilies? Well, Wikipedia describes them in these terms. Unhappily, the blooms are not fragrant. Nonetheless, it makes me very happy to introduce my never gritty, ever witty, joyful collaborator, colleague, true friend, fellow futurist and architectural designer, Trudy Watt.
Thank you, Peter. Designing in the medical realm makes me happy because it is changing how designers are valued and how we train physicians at Jefferson, where it serves multiple functions ranging from providing the means to introduce difference and diversity through co-teaching with architecture students, for example, who collectively improve each other's own distinct fields, something I was happy to initiate at Jefferson this summer with Peter, in a prototype studio called Postcode, based on the canonical film Powers of 10 by the Eames office. The first aim was to produce a common language between architecture and science. Another was the proper teaching of ways of looking in art and design, which also improves clinical skills and empathy for and towards patients and fellow healthcare workers. Everyone should be happier with that. Art and design, if curated with care and through rigorous discourse with professionals, are therapeutic unto themselves. We are especially interested in architectural and open urban spaces that heal, evidenced by our partnership with the Rail Park. Design that connects. Art that puts individuals, communities, and patients first, such as our current graphic medicine program with Tom Judd, Phil Abundance, and Mural Arts Philadelphia for Design Philadelphia 2016. These are the types of projects that make both of us very happy, while hopefully improving each of our lives.
After working in academic healthcare for more than 30 years and knowing the value of design, I'm really perfectly happy to wager that designers should and will hold as much sway in the medical classroom and hospital boardroom as someone with a PhD in pathology, a medical degree, or an MBA. This quote by Jessica Helfand, which I'm just about to say, who will be MEDstudio's second artist in residence next spring, from her brilliantly insightful book called Design, The Invention of Desire, the reading of which made us very happy, provides a reminder to all of what proper collaborations with designers may mean and bring, and I hope it will make the designers in the audience very happy, because in my opinion, you hold the golden key to changing healthcare in spite of Washington's apparent indifference. And it goes something like this. To embrace design is to spark novelty, improve livability, expand opportunity, streamline productivity, leverage capability, and massage readability. But perhaps, most importantly, it is to engage humanity, and we do this best by being human ourselves. Thank you.
So usually when I record, I take notes, and you gave me your script, and it's the easiest notes I've ever taken, so thank you. When I was looking at your work, with Elissa, the word was empowerment. With you, the word was collaboration. You founded MEDstudio at Jeff as an anti-disciplinary agency. Peter, you've mentioned in the talk that everyone gets treated equally, whether they're architects or scientists or mathematicians. Even in our communications, that collaboration was very apparent. I emailed Peter saying, hey, can you be on this panel? And immediately he said, my partner Trudy has to be there. We have to, our voice will be stronger together. And when I met the two of you last week, Trudy was telling me how your partnership came out of a collaboration from your project last year at Design Philadelphia. Why is collaboration so important? Why does that make your design process and your scientific process work for you, or why does it make it better?
That's a good question. I mean, collaboration for science is absolutely essential. It's sort of borderless, and you cannot do science without collaboration. Probably physics in the 40s started that, and you have these massively long author papers, and biology's caught up with that. So the sort of ethics of that, if a reagent exists in a method, you ask for it, and it's given to you, and you share it. But I think the main thing that I noticed was that both in medicine and architecture in particular, we teach students in studios or in clinics, and there's this sort of team spirit, and then we send people out into the world and they have to compete with each other for spaces on residency, and that sort of single name thing, which that's why we say MEDstudio, it's not Jones or what, it's MEDstudio. It sets up I think an anti-collaborative system. The other thing that I really believe, and the reason we do this sort of equivalence thing, is that having lived and worked with designers for more than 30 years, just seeing really the abuse that happens because it's not understood, or we all know the reasons why. Yet, in fact, they had tremendous value and insight into all that we did. that, and then my collaboration with Jenny Sabin at Penn over 10 years, really showed me the value. So what we did, I'll just step back a little bit. Knowing that, we set out to say, okay, we're just going to get rid of that ridiculous model of two cultures, but we're not going to say that we're going to be designers. I'm a scientist. I'm not a designer. I might design systems. Trudy's an architectural designer and researcher. She's not a scientist. She doesn't want to be a scientist. So how do you do this without diluting the professions? How do you do it while retaining your identity, but allowing a new field possibly to emerge? And at Penn, and we've done the same thing at MEDstudio, we put architecture students with postdocs and said, you can do anything you want together, except you've got to be respectful. You've got to create a new language. It's not a lot to ask, because it's a lot to ask. And the constraint is you have to work on these three systems. And the first thing that happened over those 10 years was, I remember an architecture student walking into my office with a spreadsheet, and she was a scripter. She went on to do a PhD in cancer biology at Stanford. And she'd solved something that we hadn't been able to see for 30 or 40 years since the discovery of the system. So here was an architectural graduate student giving us a clue as to the genesis of breast cancer. And from that moment on, it's just wowie. We don't want medical students to be thinking this is an easy profession. We want them to enjoy themselves, but we don't want pull-down menus and using your opposable thumbs. That's not designing. And all of that. We've tried to get rid of all of those mythologies. So we don't. People do it very well, such as Natalie, design thinking. We don't do design thinking. We don't hack. We don't. That's robbing. In some respects, I see. We don't. We try and retain these professional boundaries, and in the true spirit of scientific collaboration, she's an expert in this, I'm an expert in that, we work together, and we find this fray, this space in between. Sorry, Trudy.
And even though we're experts in our own fields and retain that collaboration of this nature, which we're calling post-disciplinary collaboration, requires that you leave your jargon at the door. So the thing that makes you the most safe in your own discipline and helps to prove your expertise is actually detrimental within a collaboration like this. So it really allows us a freedom. It's very difficult, but a freedom to directly address the work at hand. So there can be no sort of display of professional feathers. Because we actually come from different professions and remain so even in collaboration with each other. Yeah.
I mean, it's funny, we were writing a book at the moment. The original title was going to be From Archy Speak to Science Geek, which it's not going to be called, it's going to be called Measured. But fashion, for example, I'm really interested in, and we work with MIT on creating smart fibers that are computational for clothing. But if you really look at how fashion has actually influenced medicine, it's much more than the other way around. Yet we don't speak to that because we say fashion is, and we don't think fashion is anything other than, we actually did a workshop last year with execs at the Arts and Biz Council. We had them draw, print their own fabrics, and these men made new look Dior gowns. And by the end of it, when you told them it was a $12 billion company, they stopped smiling and they really enjoyed it. So, there we go.
Thank you. Up next, we have Dr. Natalie Nixon. And we were before comparing notes, and I've known Natalie the longest out of this panel. She was my advisor at PhilU, so I was extra happy. I don't want to say extra happy because everyone I'm very happy to connect with, but I got to reconnect with Natalie after so long. Dr. Natalie Nixon is a design strategist and hybrid thinker at Figure 8 Thinking LLC. She helps organizations accelerate innovation and growth by developing meaningful strategy. Apparently I can't read tonight. By developing meaningful strategy through a design thinking and ethnographic research. She's the editor of Strategic Design Thinking, Innovation in Products, Services, Experiences, and Beyond. A regular contributor to Inc. online magazine, a fellow at the Paris D School, and a lecturer at the University of Pennsylvania. Natalie?
Thank you, Bernardo. Hi, everybody. Hi. So, design makes me happy on a really visceral level. And I'd like to start my remarks with this image. This is a photograph of my mother's hands at the sewing machine, actually at the sewing machine where she taught me how to sew. So I have a background in anthropology and fashion, and I jokingly say now that I am a recovering academic. I was a professor for 16 years, and I started my company Figure Eight Thinking almost 3 years ago, which is now my full-time endeavor, which brings me a lot of joy. And design makes me happy because on a very visceral level, it connects me to memory that allows me to be my true and whole self. And I grew up understanding that sewing was really functional art. And it was a way for my mom to have us near her. And it later became a way for her to have us out of her hair. And for us to do our own exploration. And it took me to a point where in my early 20s, when I lived in New York City, I started a business called Nat's Hats. And I started Nat's Hats really out of need because I had an amazing first job, which wasn't paying me squat, but it was really awesome. It's a really incredible program called the Urban Fellows Program, where I worked in city government. And I started sewing all of my clothing because I couldn't afford to buy all of the pretty frocks that I saw in the boutique windows in New York City. And my friends started saying, Nat, you should sell this. This is like, I would buy this. And I was like, no, I can't sell this. I just make it because I can. And I need the clothes. So I've made my winter coat. I would make outfits for work. But I started noodling on this idea of, what if? And that's actually the other reason why design makes me really happy, because designers are equipped and tasked with asking the question, what if and why not? And because I inherited my father's cojones, I walked into a boutique one day and introduced myself as a hat designer. I had the hat on my head and maybe 3 at home. I didn't know the difference at that time between inventory and samples. And that's how it all started. But I really credit my mom for introducing me to design. And as several people have indicated already, in the hierarchy of design, because there is a real hierarchy in design, architecture is at the top of that hierarchy. And then after architecture, there is industrial design, product design, graphic design, maybe some UX design. But at the bottom is fashion design. And we could have a whole nother conversation about the gender implications of that. But when you do a PhD, as I naively did while working full-time, my PhD is in design management, you have to do a literature review. And it was fascinating to me that in the literature about design, there are all these consistent references to either architecture and design or design and fashion, which is pretty fascinating and interesting in and of itself. So the visceral design makes me happy because of that visceral memory I have about functional art, about the nearness in my family. Also, I should also make a note about my mom. We grew up. My sister. I didn't have my own room until I was a sophomore in college, and I grew up sharing a room with my sister. And when my parents owned a duplex, they always rented out the first floor apartment, and our family of 4 grew up in this 2-bedroom apartment. And when you grow up in a really tiny space, you learn very quickly that you have to put everything away. But really, when I reflect on my introduction to design, again, it was through my mother, because my mother was genius at designing space and spatial relationships, and I credit her for the eye that I have for that. I want to also include this visual because this is, in a lot of underserved communities throughout our country, this is the image that teenagers have put together for a basketball hoop. And to me, that's design. Because for me, design is fundamentally about being resourceful. Design is about that capability of connecting the dots between seemingly disparate areas. It's about that capacity to say, this is the need, these are our constraints, how do we make it work? And I love referring to a visual like this because I think often in our conversations with design, and it's probably some of the reasons why design does not always feel accessible, is that there's a real opportunity to democratize design. And I think if we see evidence of design in some unsuspected places, we could really change the conversation in some really awesome ways. And this also happens to be in the Burgh in Pittsburgh, where my mom happens to be from, which is funny. The next image I want to show is, as a design strategist, I love this visual. I love it because of its simplicity. And any good theory, any good model is excellent because of its transferability, right? So what I love about this visual is that in my work in design thinking, which is a human-centered problem-solving process, right? It's really 50% ethnography, by the way, and 50% design principles. That goobity-gib, I'm sure for the podcast listeners, this is a squiggly line that gets really straight at the end. Whether you're trying to figure out better employee engagement or a much more meaningful marketing strategy or how to design a better coffee mug, right? The beginning part of that research process feels so murky. And that ambiguity is something that design helps us to get really comfortable with. That's another reason why I love design. And finally, I love design because it helps me to be blue sky in my thinking, to be expansive in my thinking. As I started saying, we're tasked to ask what if and so what. And it's that transformative power of design that makes me the most happiest. So thank you.
So you started by talking about your beginnings in design through fashion, and I love that a lot of the wording I had for my first question for you, you mentioned it, so I'm going to take it as low-hanging fruit. You mentioned that your first incursion was you were doing Nat's hats, and you just happened to walk into a boutique. You had no idea what was the difference between a sample and production, and you just mentioned that your dad talked about cojones, and when you spoke with High Res, you said that moment was cojones for you. Can you describe that moment? What went through your head? You didn't know at the moment that would change your career. Can you describe that moment when you go in there and just say, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing?
Yes. So I actually was stalking the boutique for quite some time. So I was window shopping for a long time. And I'd be on the subway in the mornings thinking about, well, if I did a business, I would call it Nat's Hats because it has a nice ring to it, and hats are low-cost materials, and they're fun. And one day, it was kind of like if you've ever jumped double Dutch rope, you're like waiting, and then you jump in. It was kind of like that. I just jumped, and I walked in, and I asked the woman who was in the front of the boutique, I said, hi, my name is Natalie Weathers at the time. I'm a hat designer. May I please speak to the owner or manager? She said, well, you're looking at her. And I said, oh, great. Well, I was wondering if you'd be interested in selling some of my work. And she said, sure, let's set up an appointment. And I was like, wow, that was really easy. So a lot of what I learned from that lesson is what actually my husband and I call the law of momentum. You know, you just keep going through the door that opens. You follow the breadcrumbs. And but it starts really with the question, you know, would you entertain the idea of selling my work? May I show you my work? And for me, that cojones moment really was about, and as we all, you know, in this work, I tell my clients all the time, my graduate students all the time, it's all about framing the right question. Did you ask the right question? We are obsessed with did I even ask the right question before, you know, going down this line of thought? But that was the moment for me.
And as a Spanish speaker, I'm so happy that you use the term cojones to describe it. Up next, we have Christine Scheller. Christine is the Vice President of Design at FS Investment and the President of AIGA Philadelphia. Christine Scheller is a Vice President of Design at FS Investment, where she oversees execution of all creative output, including brand, design, strategy, video and photography, digital, print, and related platforms. Prior to joining FS, she served as the creative director at SIG, where she developed and deployed brand standards for the Philadelphia and New York-based trading firm. With creative leadership positions at Lincoln Financial Group, Delaware Investments, and Motorola, Christine has over 20 years of experience managing in-house brands. She currently serves as the president of AIGA Philadelphia on the board of the Philadelphia Community Arts Network. Christine.
Thank you. Bernardo is going to serve as my slide advancer. So, design makes me happy because it gives me an excuse to wear a lot of black. May I please admit for our listeners that our entire panel is in black today. So it's essentially our uniform, so that's wonderful. Design makes me happy because it's no longer nice to have. So technology has really helped make design much more accessible, and so bad design and no design is just no longer acceptable. It's, good design is now table stakes, right? Design makes me happy because it's more than just shining turds. Let's just take a second and talk about this emoji. Who decided that this was an acceptable emoji for poop? Because I've never seen poop look like this. Right? But we were all using it, and we've accepted it. We should challenge that. But really, it's, design is much more meaningful than, and sometimes you do have to shine the turds, but I think design has a much bigger role to play now than it used to. Design makes me happy because it's afforded me some incredible relationships. So design has gifted me some of my best friends, and closest friends and amazing colleagues, some of who are in the room today, who I would not have met if it were not for design. Design makes me happy because it made it okay to be a working artist. I don't know how many of you were told as children that art was not a viable, raise your hand, I just wanted to do a count. Art was not a viable career option. That's like more than half of the room, right? So those were stupid adults that told us that, because obviously we're doing art, and yes. Design makes me happy because it's like a big surprise every time. It never settles. So I love that we're working in this ever-changing landscape, and we can't just kind of rest on our laurels. We really have to grow and evolve and expand our personal skill set and knowledge base. And then finally, design makes me happy because it is everywhere around. It's in everything that we see, that we eat, that we wear, that we touch, that we smell. It's a full experience. I think I caught us up on time, too, so I'd like a shout out for that. I practiced that one. Thank you.
An extra point, I was finishing up the presentation, and Scheller says, did you realize that my color palette is the same as your branding color palette? So extra points for brand consistency for the branding person. You're talking about polishing turds.
Yes.
She said it, I just repeated it.
Yep.
And I'm making an analogy here. A couple weeks ago, you were instrumental in planning the in-house conference for AIGA Philadelphia, and in-house used to be an industry that was secondary, that within the design industry was considered unsexy, but your whole career has been an in-house, and nowadays it has a huge resurgence, and in-house is seen as a powerhouse, is seen as a force within corporations. So you can talk about your process. Why did you decide to start with in-house? Why did you decide to stay with in-house? And what does it mean to you now that what you put all your efforts into is now becoming this strong force?
So it's a great question. I think I told the anecdote that when I started out, in college, I was working at Motorola. Dermot may remember I would come from work some days and then go into a painting studio and get my work clothes covered in paint. But that was, it was unusual, I think, for a Tyler student to be working, but I was offered this pretty awesome opportunity to kind of work in their then publication department, and then eventually I was put into management training, and I knew that it wasn't the sexiest work in the world, and my mother around at that time was like, oh, maybe one day an agency will hire you. It was a place in the late 90s, and people didn't understand what designers could do at a company like Motorola. It was really just not universally understood, and I think So, it may have just been that I was a creature of habit, and that's kind of what kept me in-house, and started out in technology and then kind of have jumped around in financial services, which there's a lot of financial service companies in Philadelphia. But I said at the conference that I feel like in-house is we're like the cool kids now. People call us all the time and ask, what the experience is like, or I run my own little studio and I'm thinking about joining an in-house team. And I think it's because within an organization, you're the team that really helps shape the brand, and you kind of create the culture. We do a lot, Lauren Dockerty's on my team at FS, and we do a lot to try to bring others in to do creative brainstorming exercises and to kind of make design be a bigger part of our culture. We work for a CEO who really believes in the power and the value of design, so I feel really fortunate there. But I think the right company will value the role that design can play in business. Did that actually answer your question?
Absolutely. Well, you got applause, so yes. So I want to move on to questions for the entire group. And up here is the phone number. If anyone wants to submit questions, please include your number in the text. So I have a series of questions. You can send questions for an individual or for the whole group. I will ask a few questions, and whoever wants to answer them, go ahead. The first one, I'll just go a little lighthearted and ask if any of you can share what has been the most joyous design moment in your life or in your career.
Now that I know there's points, I want to be the one to answer. Presenting my graduate thesis to my mentor was my most happiest design moment.
What?
I got to present an architectural thesis to Elizabeth Diller, which was actually a double-edged sword, which was it was like a high moment and also a total disillusionment moment, which was fantastic to have as a graduate student. I should be answering within the context of our conversation, but I just wanted to buzz.
And you should have said something about MEDstudio.
That's right.
Yes.
Clearly the highlight.
You want to?
When I had my accessories company, one of the greatest joys, and I'm sure Natalie can also attest, is when you see someone wearing your product. And I was doing trunk shows at Henry Bendel's, and this woman, I had, as you saw some examples on one of the slides, I had these very girly beaded queen purses and plastic shiny cosmetic bags, and this woman came into Bendel's with a fur coat and a Chanel bag. And she said, "Are you the designer?" I said, "Yeah." And she pulls out of her Chanel bag one of my shiny cosmetic bags. And she was probably in her mid-50s, this executive. And I never would think in a million years that she'd be carrying one of my plastic cosmetic bags in her Chanel purse. So just the joy of seeing that. You never know what people have in their bags. And, seeing that, it brought such a smile to her face, and that she's using it every day.
Lisa is asking, what is your guilty pleasure design-wise?
Doodling.
No.
I'm obsessed with doodling. I mean, Bernardo knows. But it's I'll find any opportunity to doodle, and it's helped me bring creativity into my day. But sometimes I actually forget I'm not fully listening to what people are saying.
It's hard.
hard.
Would ditto that doodling, absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Glass block.
Say what?
Architectural glass block, like the thing that's probably in your grandparents' basement windows.
Shoes.
Something that, something that came up with when I was researching each of you and when you spoke is that all of you are using design to influence your communities. Why did you choose design as your tool?
Because I'll actually quote Hilary J on this. It's the single thread that weaves through our lives, from the smallest components, say, of a surgical kit or a drawing pen. It can be as political as a flag or as complex as an urban plan. And it just dictates everything that we do from the moment we get up till the moment we go to sleep. Design is us. That's why it's inseparable, I think, from what we do and who we are. So, yes.
And I would add, because it's inseparable, to agree, it requires that you consider the intersections of multiple complex systems all the time. So, so I'm basically saying this, it's always there. It's the only way to answer all of the questions, because it's across disciplines. It requires that you consider users, the environment, the historical context, the materials that you're going to be using. So it's,
And another thing came up when I was looking at your work was failure, where several of you mentioned failure as either embracing failure to design a better experience or embracing failure to allow yourself to push the limits. Does anyone have a story where you experienced failure and you learned from it, or you had a great story to share thanks to allowing yourself to fail at some moment? You never fail. You're all amazing.
Well,
I'm sure.
I just
Sure I have.
quickly, yeah.
Stories, let's go.
Right. I mean, one of the things about medical school is you're not allowed to fail here. You've got there because you've regurgitated a lot of facts. You've got a great memory, and you can't fail in front of a patient. You can't fail in front of your mentors. And what design is allowing us to do is actually allow people to safely fail. So you can trip and fall and pick yourself up again and learn from that, and you're not judged. You're actually lauded for it. So in our sense, I think failure is a very good thing, and we encourage failure.
I failed at every sport that I ever tried, and so that's what made the art class a safe place to be.
And I think failure just helps designers evolve their craft and also get better. I mean, I think sometimes the most magical moments are when you make those design mistakes and it actually turns out to be better than what you were expecting.
I'll go back to doodling, why I love doodling. I'll start a doodle with just a random shape or a squiggly line. And one of the things I've observed is that through doodling, you actually learn the value and power of pattern and repetition. So that one mistake scaled somehow because something really significant and beautiful and interesting. So I'm just reminded of go with the flow, follow this to its end through the process of doodling.
I was thinking about your comment, Natalie, about go with the momentum and go through. Sometimes you just had to go with the momentum, like through a hole in the floor that you maybe accidentally made there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Doodling is, it's your, no one can tell you that your doodle's wrong, right?
Nope.
So it's kind of hard to fail at that.
Right.
It's a safe place.
Right.
So someone from the audience didn't write their name, but someone asked, what allowed you to make a breakthrough in design when you were first starting out? How did you figure out your trajectory? Who asked this question? What's your name? Sharon. So what helped you break through in design and figure out your trajectories?
I think for me it was having a mentor and a boss who really believed in me and kind of pushed me to think differently. He was my boss at Motorola, and he helps me with school, he helps me with work, and I think that as some of us get older in our careers, it's important to remember to give back and find kind of that next generation of a great designer.
For me, I finally found my flow. I finally felt at home. I have always been very hybrid and integrative in the way I approach things, and I finally found a space that allowed me to pull from multiple places and spaces. And you know it when you see it, you know it when you feel it, and that for me was how I found it.
I think it's a pretty just relentless process that you kind of just have to be in it, whether it feels good or not, and agree that it's extremely important to have your eyes open and your ears open to your mentors, and to believe people who say that they want to support what you're doing and that you're great, and really listen to them and partner with them and support them. because there's really, that's the only way breakthrough work can happen in collaboration with a really important mentor, I think.
And I think that was my turning point as well. I came to the States to work with an Iranian-American female scientist, Mina Bissell, and actually had 3 female mentors, and they'd all sort of flown under the radar because they were ignored. And during that 30 years that they were all ignored, they all emerged with their own field. And when I realized the importance, I mean, it was very early on actually how important design was, and one of them really did use design fundamentally in her research. I had to wait till I was tenured, and then I did the math and went, okay, I could do this incremental stuff, or could I? And it was my mentors, Peter Davis at Penn, and Mark Tukaczynski, who's now the provost at Jefferson, and my partner at the time, who really said, go for it, and Jenny Savin, all of these people, Detlef Mertens, but it took a long time to get there. I'm hoping that we don't have to wait for that long for people to make that transcendent decision to move from one to the other and feel comfortable still being themselves. But mentorship, I think, is the main thing. Yeah.
And from my own experience with my company, I'm not trained in art or business. I am self-taught, and we were talking on this panel this evening about doodling, and I just found myself doodling on Post-it notes and on napkins on airplanes, and started taking some textile design courses. And I love what Natalie said this evening about following those breadcrumbs, like one thing kind of led to another, and just putting yourself out there. And I thought I was starting a greeting card company, and then just from putting these beaded placemats out at a paper show, the overwhelming response was, these images need to be on accessories, and I didn't know anything about the accessories industry. And I highly believe strongly that sometimes ignorance is bliss when you're starting in a new endeavor. Like, what you don't know, you don't know. And you're going to make mistakes along the way. But now, I think it's just important to keep moving forward.
It's going to be a little nepotistic. My sister Orly asked a question. What advice would you give your younger self about following your dreams, even if people would advise that it's not possible?
I would use those words exactly, just to follow your dreams. And I received an amazing gift from my parents when I was a sophomore in college. First world problems, but I called home upset because I didn't know what I would major in, and I didn't want to disappoint them, and I wanted to make sure I got a good job, because they sacrificed a lot for our education. And my parents would listen to me go on, and finally they said, well, what are you enjoying? And I went through what I'm not like, what do you like? What's really turning you on? And they said, that's what you should do. That's what you should study. And I was like, so you're okay if I study anthropology? And they were like, yeah, that's what you, and my father said to me, you'll have to turn down opportunities. And it's true, when you study what you love, when you do what you love, no one has to tell you to stay later, get up earlier, work harder. You bring a certain energy to it. So I would just remind my younger self of that wonderful gift that my parents gave me. And I just want to do a shout out as well. I want to do a shout out to Richard Thaler, who is a behavioral economist, and it was announced today he is the winner of the Nobel Peace Prize in economics. And he's one of many people I have a professional crush on. And I should say, it's okay, my husband is aware. But the reason I have been fascinated with Richard Thaler's work is that he put the human back into economics, and he accepted and embraced the inconsistencies and imperfections and the fact that human beings are not predictive in a field, in a social science that wanted so hard to be taken seriously, air quotes, as a really hard science. So another way of thinking about that question, what advice would you give? I mean, he was ostracized at many different points in his career because he didn't toe the line of traditional economics. He kind of paved the road for behavioral econ. And, to look for other examples of people who just forge ahead on that inkling, on that intuition that this actually, I know we're supposed to make these graphs and charts that are, logical and rational, but in fact, the data is showing us something else. Why aren't we paying attention to that inconsistency? Reminders of others who are leading the way in that is also good advice.
I think surrounding yourself with people that believe in you and that support you, but who are also going to challenge you. And also another piece of advice would be to build a team. Don't do it alone, and collaborate, and find people that are really going to help you get to that next step or level within your business or your design.
I would quote, I just want to add, from James Victory, Fec Perfection. There is not one path to do this, and the things that it's not about following your dreams, it's about having the courage to diverge from what appears to be I'm doing air quotes, podcast path, and collaborate with a cellular biologist and take risks in your career because you're going to invent a new field and find great satisfaction.
Now, when we gathered at the beginning, I told you I had a little surprise for the end. When I do my podcast, I have what I call the rapid fire section. And basically, I ask very quick questions about things that make you happy, and I want your gut reactions. I'm going to go down the line, and I pair them up based on my research for you, thinking what's good for your personality, so hopefully I paired them up correctly. I just want your gut reaction. If you're stumped, you don't like a question, we can pass. No pressure. Or pressure, and, just crumble. So we're going to start with Elissa. Who makes you happy?
My son.
Peter, where is your happy place?
The Lake District in England.
Trudy, who is the happiest person you can think of?
Bjork.
Natalie, what is the happiest word you can think of?
Joy.
Christine, do you have a happy food?
Oof. That's a tough one. It changes. Tofu. It's tofu right now.
We have a little thing that's treat yourself when we have ice cream
yeah.
and French fries.
That's right. Yeah.
Elissa, do you have a happy color?
Blue violet. It's Crayola crayon color.
Peter, is there a movie or a song that makes you happy?
Yes.
Peter, what is a movie or a song that makes you happy?
Oh, there's so many. At the moment, I can't stop playing Mary J. Blige from her London recordings of Nobody But You, and it gets me to work really fast because I can walk to it at speed. So I'd say that, Mary J. Blige.
And I just learned to phrase questions so that I can get an actual answer. Thank you, Peter. Trudy, what is the last thing you remember that made you happy?
Having a really heart-to-heart conversation with Peter today.
Natalie, finish the sentence. Happiness means?
Happiness means being yourself.
Yes.
Christine, finish the sentence. I'm happiest when?
I'd like to go back first on the tofu. Right now it's avocado. Well, I'm sorry, repeat this next question.
Christine, finish the sentence.
Yes.
I'm happiest when?
When I'm at home with Paul Hedman and the Fonz.
And today's Paul Hedman's birthday. and he's
Happy
here
birthday,
with
Paul
us.
Hedman. He let me come out
He
for
left.
this on his birthday.
It's his birthday,
He's
and he allowed us
smiling.
to enjoy Christine's presence because he's awesome and
Yeah.
we can enjoy her. And for everyone, you can just blurt it out or go by turns. This is my favorite question to ask. What is your first happy memory?
Coloring in my basement and cutting.
I think swimming with my brother.
Meeting my little brother for the first time.
My third birthday, candles. Everyone was focused on me, and a cake by my great aunt Uni.
Aw. Making art projects out of office supplies. that were later hidden from me.
I want to thank all 5 of you. This experience is leading up to today, and I'm very thankful that you're all here and you shared why design makes you happy. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. And those of you listening at home, thank you. Hopefully you here are going to listen again next week at home. Here's a link if you want to check out next week. It's going to come out on Monday, mid-morning. You can check for links where to listen. Any parting words? Any breakout songs or dance competitions?
No, just thank you.
Thank you.
Obrigada. That is actually the word I wish I had said when you asked me a word that makes me happy. That's thank you in Portuguese.
Nice.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elissa, Peter, Trudy, Natalie, and Christine for sharing how design makes you happy. Thanks to everyone who attended, and thank you for listening. A special thanks to the Center for Architecture and Design and Design Philadelphia for the venue, technical support, and for listing this event under Design Philadelphia 2017. AIGA Philadelphia for partnering up on the Creative Happy Hour before the event. SteeleEmpire for providing the audio recording, and Jason Zappolo for editing this episode. You can learn more about this project at thehappypodcast.com, and you can find us on social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at thehappypodcast, and youtube.com/thehappypodcast. Please find us on iTunes so you can get updates on your device every time we release an episode. And if you want to have more people find us, please leave us a 5-star review. That really helps. Thank you for listening. I will see you soon.